In the quiet dawn of the digital age, a revolution was forged in the laboratories of California. The transistor, that tiny switch of silicon, had already transformed the world, but it was the microprocessor that would unleash the true power of computing. In 1968, two visionaries, Robert Noyce and Gordon Moore, fled the confines of Fairchild Semiconductor to found their own company in Santa Clara. They called it Intel, a name evoking integrated electronics, and with it, they ignited a flame that would illuminate the future of humanity. Moore's law, that prophetic observation that the number of transistors on a chip would double roughly every 2 years, became the relentless drumbeat of progress. Intel rode this wave with ferocious determination, pioneering the first commercial microprocessor, the 4004, in 1971. It was a device no larger than a fingernail, yet it held the potential to command machines with the precision of human thought. Through the 1970s and 1980s, Intel's ascent seemed inexorable. The company dominated the memory chip market at first, but a brutal onslaught from Japanese competitors in DRAM forced a pivotal shift. Under the iron leadership of Andy Grove, the third employee and eventual chief executive, Intel pivoted decisively to microprocessors. Grove's mantra, "Only the paranoid survive," became the company's creed. In 1985, Intel secured a monumental partnership with IBM, supplying the x86 architecture for the personal computer. This alliance propelled Intel into the heart of the PC revolution. As millions of homes and offices filled with beige boxes running Microsoft software on Intel Silicon, the company's dominance grew unchallenged. By the 1990s, Intel controlled over 80% of the microprocessor market, its chips powering the vast majority of the world's computers. The golden era unfolded with breathtaking speed. Intel's fabs, those vast cathedrals of clean rooms and precision engineering, churned out ever more powerful processors. The Pentium series became synonymous with computing performance, fueling the internet boom and the dot-com frenzy. Revenues soared, market capitalization ballooned, and Intel stood as the undisputed titan of Silicon Valley. America led the world in semiconductor innovation, holding nearly 40% of global manufacturing capacity. The integrated device manufacturer model, where Intel designed and fabricated its own chips, was hailed as the pinnacle of efficiency. Vertical integration allowed tight control over every stage, from raw silicon wafers to finished products. Competitors like AMD scraped by in the shadows, while overseas rivals struggled to match Intel's scale and technological edge. Yet even in this zenith, subtle fissures began to emerge. The semiconductor industry was evolving in ways that Intel's leaders could scarcely foresee. As the 20th century drew to a close, the explosive growth of mobile devices hinted at new horizons beyond the desktop. But Intel remained
laser-focused on the PC and server markets, where margins were fat and dominance absolute. The company's culture, forged in paranoia and triumph, prized internal excellence above all. Outsourcing manufacturing was seen as a weakness, a surrender of core strength. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, a different vision was taking shape. In Taiwan, a former Texas Instruments executive named Morris Chang returned home in the mid-1980s, lured by government incentives to head an industrial research institute. Chang saw an opportunity that American giants overlooked: a pure-play foundry dedicated solely to manufacturing chips for others without competing in design. In 1987, Chang founded the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, with backing from the Taiwanese government and Philips. This model decoupled design from fabrication, allowing fabless companies to innovate without the crushing capital burden of building fabs. At first, TSMC was a modest player, producing less advanced chips, but its focus on manufacturing excellence, relentless yield improvement, and open collaboration with customers set it on a trajectory of quiet accumulation. Governments in Asia poured subsidies into their semiconductor industries, recognizing chips as the oil of the new economy. Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore invested heavily, while the United States, basking in Intel's glory, allowed its manufacturing share to erode gradually. As the new millennium dawned, Intel's empire appeared impregnable. Under Chief Executive Craig Barrett and then Paul Otellini, the company pushed boundaries with ever smaller process nodes, cramming billions of transistors onto silicon dies. The Core architecture redefined performance, and data centers devoured Xeon processors in endless quantities. Intel's market value dwarfed rivals, its brand etched into global consciousness through the iconic Intel Inside campaign. America celebrated its technological supremacy, with Intel as the crown jewel. Policymakers spoke of semiconductors as a strategic asset, yet little was done to counter the offshoring trend. Companies chased lower costs in Asia, and the fabless model proliferated. NVIDIA, AMD, Qualcomm flourished by designing chips and outsourcing production to foundries like TSMC. The seeds of decline were sown in complacency. Intel's vertical integration, once a fortress, began to feel like a millstone. Building and equipping fabs demanded tens of billions in capital, diverting resources from diversification. Stock buybacks became a priority, returning vast sums to shareholders, while rivals invested aggressively in new paradigms. The mobile revolution erupted with the iPhone in 2007, a device that redefined computing. Apple approached Intel to supply chips, but Otellini demurred, deeming the volumes insufficient and margins too thin. Intel clung to x86, ill-suited for power-constrained mobile devices, while ARM-based designs from fabless firms conquered smartphones. Billions of handsets
shipped with chips fabricated by TSMC, granting the Taiwanese foundry unprecedented scale and learning curve advantages. By the early 2010s, the landscape shifted irrevocably. TSMC's yields soared, its process technology advanced relentlessly, and its customer base expanded to include the world's most innovative designers. Intel's node transitions faltered, delays mounted, and the once unassailable lead evaporated. The PC market stagnated as consumers turned to phones and tablets. Intel's attempts to enter mobile floundered. Atom processors consumed too much power, and market share slipped away. Meanwhile, cloud computing exploded, but even there, custom silicon from hyperscalers began to challenge traditional servers. The rise of graphics processing units for parallel computing foreshadowed the AI boom, yet Intel lagged in GPUs, ceding ground to NVIDIA. America's share of global semiconductor manufacturing plummeted from 37% to 12%, a silent erosion masked by Intel's lingering design prowess. Policy inertia allowed this drift as Asian governments subsidized their champions aggressively. The chip war had begun, not with fanfare, but with quiet decisions in boardrooms and laboratories across the world. Intel, the architect of the microprocessor era, stood at the precipice, its dominance fraying thread by thread. The inevitable convergence of forces, technological, economic, geopolitical, was gathering momentum. What had seemed eternal was in truth ephemeral. The age of American hegemony in chips was drawing to a close, and a new power was rising in Taiwan. The fractures deepened as the second decade of the 21st century unfolded. Intel's once vaunted process leadership began to crumble under the weight of repeated delays. The transition to 10-nanometer production, promised for years, stumbled through yield issues and technical hurdles that defied quick resolution. While Intel extended the life of its 14-nanometer node across multiple processor generations, rivals surged ahead. TSMC mastered 7-nanometer technology, delivering chips with superior density and efficiency. AMD, long relegated to second place, partnered with TSMC to unleash the Ryzen series, eroding Intel's grip on the high-performance market. Consumers and enterprises alike discovered alternatives that matched or exceeded Intel's offerings at lower power and cost. The mobile misstep compounded the pain. Apple's decision to abandon Intel processors in favor of its own ARM-based silicon, fabricated by TSMC, marked a seismic shift. Mac computers gained unprecedented battery life and performance, pulling the rug from under Intel's long-standing dominance in laptops. Qualcomm and others flooded the smartphone space with efficient designs,
leaving Intel's Atom efforts marginalized. The explosion of data centers offered temporary solace, with Xeon processors devouring vast server markets. Yet even here, clouds gathered. Hyperscalers like Amazon,
Google, and Microsoft began designing custom accelerators, outsourcing production to TSMC for optimized silicon tailored to their workloads. Under Brian Krzanich and then Bob Swan, Intel's leadership navigated turbulent waters with mixed success. Massive stock buybacks propped up share prices, returning billions to investors, while capital expenditures strained to keep pace with node advancements. The company acquired Habana Labs and Mobileye to diversify into AI and autonomous driving, but integration proved challenging. Cultural inertia persisted, with paranoia giving way to denial. Engineers whispered of missed opportunities, of a company too wedded to its x86 legacy to embrace the heterogeneous future. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed supply chain vulnerabilities, amplifying calls for onshoring manufacturing. Yet Intel's fabs remained concentrated in the United States and Ireland, while Asia's foundries scaled relentlessly. In 2021, Pat Gelsinger returned as chief executive, the prodigal son summoned to restore glory. A veteran of 30 years at Intel, Gelsinger brought evangelical fervor and a bold vision. He proclaimed an ambitious roadmap, 5 nodes in 4 years, reclaiming process leadership by 2025. Intel 7, formerly 10-nanometer enhanced SuperFin, shipped in volume. Intel 4 and Intel 3 followed, incorporating extreme ultraviolet lithography at last. The Angstrom era beckoned with Intel 20A and 18A, promising ribbon FET transistors and power via backside power delivery. Gelsinger restructured the company, elevating the foundry business to compete directly with TSMC. Intel Foundry Services courted external customers, aiming to become a world-class manufacturer for all. The IDM 2.0 strategy integrated design, manufacturing, and packaging under one roof, augmented by partnerships. Massive investments flowed into new fabs in Arizona, Ohio, and expansions abroad. Gelsinger lobbied fiercely for government support, helping secure passage of the CHIPS and Science Act in 2022. Billions in subsidies and tax credits poured in, earmarked for domestic expansion. Ohio's Silicon Heartland rose from cornfields, promising thousands of jobs and a resurgence of American manufacturing. Intel committed over $100 billion to U.S. facilities, positioning itself as the linchpin of national semiconductor resilience. Early wins emerged. Microsoft selected Intel 18A for custom chips. Amazon deepened ties with multi-year deals. The Core Ultra series, branded Meteor Lake, introduced AI capabilities with neural processing units. Intel edged into the AI PC market, shipping millions of units with dedicated accelerators. Yet challenges mounted. The 7-nanometer delay, rebranded as Intel 4, arrived late, allowing TSMC's 3-nanometer family to dominate high-end mobile and computing. NVIDIA's GPUs, fabricated exclusively by TSMC, powered the generative AI boom. Blackwell and Hopper architectures devoured foundry capacity, granting TSMC economies of scale Intel could only envy. Costs escalated. Fabs demanded ever greater capital, with each new node costing tens of billions. Intel's vertical model burdened it with full responsibility for yields and ramps, while fabless competitors shared risks across multiple clients. Delays persisted into the 18A node, with reports of yield struggles and customer hesitancy. Broadcom tested the process but deferred commitments. Panther Lake, the first internal 18A product, faced scrutiny over power efficiency and performance. Meanwhile, TSMC's N3 and N2 nodes advanced smoothly, securing orders from Apple, NVIDIA, and AMD. Taiwan's foundry commanded over 90% of advanced logic production, its pure-play model yielding unmatched expertise. Geopolitical storms raged. U.S. export controls restricted China's access to cutting-edge tools, but Beijing poured subsidies into domestic champions like SMIC. Taiwan's vulnerability loomed large. The island's fabs a potential flashpoint in great power rivalry. TSMC diversified with Arizona and Japan facilities, but leading-edge production remained rooted in Taiwan. Intel positioned itself as America's secure alternative, yet execution faltered. Layoffs swept through the company in 2024, 15,000 jobs cut to stem losses. Stock prices languished, market capitalization dwarfed by NVIDIA's meteoric rise. By mid-2025, the turnaround's promise dimmed. Gelsinger's tenure ended abruptly, forced out amid board impatience. Lip-Bu-Tan assumed interim leadership, exploring strategic shifts, including potential separation of design and manufacturing. Rumors swirled of acquisitions,
partnerships, even stakes from rivals. The CHIPS Act funds flowed, nearly $8 billion direct grants finalized, yet milestones slipped. Ohio fabs delayed to 2030, Arizona ramps slowed. Intel outsourced more production to TSMC, Lunar Lake, and Arrow Lake, leveraging Taiwanese nodes for competitiveness. America's manufacturing share hovered near 12%, a far cry from the 37% of 1990. TSMC's dominance in sub-3 nanometer nodes approached monopoly levels, its revenues soaring on AI demand. Samsung gained ground in memory and select foundry work, but trailed in logic. The chip war intensified, subsidies proliferating across Europe, Japan, Korea. Intel, bearer of American hopes, grappled with identity. The integrated model, once strength, now anchor. Diversification into foundry services yielded modest external revenue, far short of goals. The forces converged with merciless precision. Technological momentum favored specialized foundries. Economic gravity pulled production to subsidized Asia. Geopolitical necessity demanded diversification, yet trust in Intel wavered. The company's engineers toiled in clean rooms, pushing boundaries of physics. Billions etched into silicon, transistors shrinking toward atomic limits. Moore's law endured, but its benefits accrued elsewhere. Intel's decline accelerated, not through cataclysm, but through cumulative erosion. The empire that defined computing teetered, its foundations shifting beneath the weight of a changed world. A new order solidified, with Taiwan at its center, America scrambling to reclaim ground lost over decades. The year 2025 unfolded as a crucible for Intel's ambitions. Lip-Bu Tan, appointed chief executive in March after the abrupt departure of Pat Gelsinger, inherited a company in flux. Tan, a seasoned investor with deep roots in the semiconductor ecosystem through Walden International and other ventures, brought a pragmatic lens shaped by decades of backing transformative technologies. His early moves signaled a departure from the evangelical intensity of his predecessor. Divestitures loomed over non-core assets, operational efficiencies targeted $17 billion in expense reductions, and the foundry business sharpened its focus on execution over grand proclamations. Progress on the 18A node provided glimmers of hope. Risk production commenced, with Panther Lake client processors and Clearwater Forest server chips powering on and booting operating systems healthily. Yields improved steadily, positioning internal products for volume ramps in the second half of the year. The node incorporated ribbon-FET gate-all-around transistors and power via backside power delivery, innovations poised to reclaim performance per watt advantages. Extensions like 18AP and 18APT emerged, enabling advanced 3D stacking and appealing to potential external customers. Fab expansions in Arizona and Oregon accelerated, with high-volume facilities gearing for leading-edge output. Government support crystallized through the CHIPS and Science Act. Nearly $8 billion in direct grants flowed, augmented by tax credits and secure enclave allocations. These funds fueled over $100 billion in domestic investments, transforming sites in Ohio, Arizona, New Mexico, and Oregon into hubs of resurgence. The U.S. share of global manufacturing capacity, stagnant at around 12%, began a projected climb toward 14% by decade's end. Intel positioned itself as the anchor of this onshoring effort, promising secure, resilient supply chains amid escalating geopolitical tensions. Partnerships deepened. NVIDIA invested billions in equity, securing a significant stake and signaling confidence in Intel's trajectory. Amazon committed to multi-year custom silicon deals, spanning Xeon processors on Intel 3 and AI accelerators on 18A. Rumors swirled of Apple exploring foundry options, while Tata Electronics in India designated Intel as a key customer for emerging facilities. Malaysia expansions added capacity, diversifying global footprints. Stock prices surged, doubling from early-year lows, propelled by AI PC shipments and profitability returns after brutal losses. Yet, shadows lengthened. TSMC's dominance intensified, commanding over 65% of advanced foundry revenue. Its 3nm and 2nm nodes shipped in volume, powering NVIDIA's Blackwell GPUs and Apple's latest silicon. Samsung gained traction in select segments, but the pure-play model reigned supreme. Intel's external foundry revenue remained modest, trailing ambitions as fabless giants locked in Taiwanese capacity amid insatiable AI demand. Delays in external tapeouts persisted, with volume commitments elusive for 18A. Controversies erupted around Tan's dual roles. Investments in firms with China ties drew scrutiny, amplified by reports of tool evaluations from sanctioned entities.
Questions arose over conflicts, as pursued acquisitions overlapped with personal portfolios. Regulatory fines from past antitrust battles resurfaced, trimmed but unresolved. Layoffs continued, workforce streamlining to align with focused priorities. Networking units retained after reviews, preserving synergies but burdening balance sheets. The AI era accelerated.
Relentlessly. Generative models devoured compute, hyperscalers deployed custom accelerators at scale, Intel's gaudy accelerators and Core Ultra neural units shipped in millions, carving niches in inference and edge computing. Yet, NVIDIA's ecosystem lock-in proved formidable, its market capitalization dwarfing Intel's by multiples. AMD's Ryzen AI and EPYC processors, fabricated by TSMC, captured server share aggressively. Qualcomm ARM-based designs infiltrated Windows ecosystems, challenging x86 hegemony. Geopolitical currents swirled. U.S. export controls tightened, restricting advanced tools to China while subsidizing domestic builds. Taiwan's vulnerability underscored diversification imperatives, with TSMC sprinkling facilities in Arizona and Japan. Intel touted its American-centric fabs as strategic assets, courting defense and secure workloads. Subsidies proliferated globally, Europe and Japan bolstering champions, Korea fortifying memory leadership. By December, realities sharpened. Stock volatility returned amid headline risks, China-linked scrutiny, and analyst recalibrations. Revenue stabilized, profitability flickered, but execution gaps lingered. The 14A node advanced in planning, engaging lead customers for future leaps. Backside power enhancements and transistor refinements promise competitiveness, yet timelines stretched into late decade for peak yields. America's chip war evolved into a marathon of resilience. Intel, bearer of national hopes, navigated turbulent seas. Investments poured in, technologies matured, partnerships formed. But the inexorable shift persisted. Foundry specialized, economies scaled in Asia, innovation decoupled from fabrication. TSMC's yields soared, its customer roster unparalleled. Intel's integrated model, resilient in theory, strained under capital intensities and yield ramps. The convergence accelerated. Technological paradigms favored open ecosystems, economic incentives rewarded pure play focus, geopolitical imperatives demanded redundancy. Intel's decline, once gradual, confronted inflection points. Turnaround narratives clashed with structural headwinds. The empire, rebuilt on silicon dreams, grappled with a world remade. Taiwan solidified as the fulcrum. America rebuilt foundations, but leadership slipped further. The forces, unrelenting, propelled toward a new equilibrium, where dominance yielded to distributed strength, and American preeminence became a memory reshaped by global realities. The winter of 2025 cast long shadows over Intel's sprawling campuses. As December's chill settled across Silicon Valley and the vast construction sites in Arizona and Ohio, the company confronted the culmination of forces that had been building for decades. Lip Bu Tan, the venture capitalist turned chief executive, navigated a storm of scrutiny and execution challenges. Allegations swirled that his pursuit of acquisitions for AI startups like Revos and Samba Nova enriched his personal portfolio, prompting board policies to force recusals in conflicted decisions. Reports emerged of evaluations involving tools from sanctioned suppliers, ties lingering from his investment past. Internal memos defended hires amid trade secret lawsuits from TSMC, while the board grappled with balancing his dual worlds of corporate leadership and venture stakes. On the factory floors, the 18A node reached a pivotal threshold. Risk production transitioned to volume ramps, with Panther Lake processors powering on and yielding predictably. Monthly improvements hovered around 7%, sufficient for internal shipments of Core Ultra client chips and Clearwater Forest servers. Fab 52 in Arizona hummed with activity, high-volume lines dedicated to the Angstrom-era silicon. Extensions like 18AP and 18APT enabled advanced 3D stacking, courting defense contracts and secure workloads under CHIPS Act enclaves. Nearly $8 billion in grants fueled expansions, transforming cornfields into beacons of domestic resurgence. Stock prices climbed toward $40 per share, market capitalization approaching $200 billion, buoyed by AI PC demand and partnerships with NVIDIA and Amazon. Yet, the triumphs felt tempered. External foundry revenue lagged far behind ambitions, with major fabless designers committing capacity to TSMC's mature 3nm and emerging 2nm lines. Rumors persisted of pivots toward 14A as the true battleground,
engaging lead customers earlier in the cycle with refined power-direct backside delivery. Yields on 18A, while advancing, required further maturation for commercial margins, delaying broad external tapeouts. Apple explored entry-level M-series production on 18A variants for 2027, a validation teased but not secured. Microsoft and AWS deepened custom deals, yet the pure-play allure of Taiwan proved resilient. Geopolitical wins intensified. U.S. export controls tightened further, while subsidies cascaded across allies in Europe and Asia. TSMC diversified with Arizona and Japanese facilities, its dominance in advanced logic exceeding 65%. Samsung pressed gains in packaging and select nodes. America's manufacturing share inched upward from 12%, propelled by CHIPS incentives and private billions, projected toward 15% by decade's end. Intel anchored this effort, fabs rising as symbols of resilience against Taiwan's vulnerability. The broader landscape revealed inexorable shifts. The AI explosion demanded unprecedented scale, hyperscalers deploying custom accelerators fabricated overseas. NVIDIA's ecosystem entrenched, AMD capturing server share, Qualcomm infiltrating Windows with efficient ARM designs. x86 endured in enterprises and enthusiasts, but mobile and edge computing favored power-sipping alternatives. Intel's Gaudi accelerators and neural units shipped millions, carving inference niches, yet the generative boom accrued to rivals. Decades of decisions converged here. The pivot from memory to microprocessors under Grove's paranoia secured eras of dominance. Partnerships with IBM and Microsoft built the PC empire. Yet missed mobile opportunities, delayed nodes, and vertical burdens eroded advantages. Outsourcing to TSMC granted scale to fabless innovators, while Asian subsidies built unmatched foundries. Complacency in policy allowed manufacturing drift, from 37% global share to a fraction. Under Tan's stewardship, Intel restructured relentlessly. Non-core divestitures streamlined focus, expenses slashed by billions. Foundry services pursued system-level innovation, packaging leadership with Foveros and EMIB. Government alliances secured funds and defense priority. Engineers pushed atomic limits, RibbonFET and PowerVia pioneering efficiency. Panther Lake promised AI-enhanced laptops, manufactured domestically for the first time in years. But the chip war's verdict crystallized. TSMC's yields soared on insatiable demand, revenues eclipsing Intel's. Pure play. Specialization rewarded relentless process mastery. Economic gravity favored subsidized ecosystems. Geopolitical necessity demanded diversification, yet trust flowed to proven execution. Intel's integrated model, resilient in heritage, strained against capital intensities and ramp risks. America reclaimed ground, fabs employing thousands, supply chains shortening. Innovation persisted in design, software ecosystems, and heterogeneous computing. Yet leadership in fabrication, the heart of progress, resided elsewhere. Moore's law marched onward, transistors densifying, performance compounding, benefits distributed globally, accelerating humanity's digital frontier. Intel stood transformed, no longer unchallenged titan, but determined contender. The decline, once whispered, now acknowledged in boardrooms and markets. Not collapse, but redefinition. The forces, technological, economic, geopolitical, proved unstoppable. Taiwan's foundry empire solidified. America's resurgence began tentatively. The microprocessor pioneer adapted, survival forged in silicon's unforgiving physics. History's arc bent toward distributed power. No single nation or company monopolized the future. Chips, the new oil, flowed through diversified veins. Intel's story, emblematic of American ingenuity and hubris, entered a new chapter. The war lost in advanced nodes, but battles ahead in systems, AI, security. The digital age advanced relentlessly, indifferent to past glories. What rose in California decades ago evolved, enduring in altered form. The flame, dimmed but not extinguished, illuminated paths forward in a multipolar world. If you followed this journey through Intel's rise and fall in the chip war and felt the weight of how America lost its edge in the technology that powers our world, then take a moment now. Hit that like button to show your support. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you believe Intel can still turn it around? Has the United States already lost the semiconductor race for good? Or is the real story yet to unfold?
Your voice matters. Like, comment, let's keep the conversation going.